Hello and welcome to Symphony Seats. I'm so excited to have you come along as we're off to see the Toronto Symphony Orchestra. Tonight's performance is the opener of the 2023-24 season. We'll be under the baton of Gustavo Gimeno, musical director of the Toronto Symphony Orchestra, and he'll be joined by world-class piano soloist Jean-Yves Thibaudet. We have a great program tonight. We've got the piece by Lili Boulanger, Du Matin de Printemps, followed next by George Gershwin's Piano Concerto in F, and finally we'll round off the night with an extremely exciting performance of Stravinsky's Rite of Spring. So come along as we review the program, talk about the performance. We're going to give you a review of my seat, and then we'll talk about tips and tricks for navigating Roy Thomson Hall like a champ. And finally, at the end of the night, we'll see if we can find the thread that pulls all the pieces of the program together. Excited to have you along. Excited it's opening night. Welcome to Roy Thomson Hall. If you've never been here before, let me give you a quick introduction so that you can make sure you are able to navigate yourself to the entrance. So, Roy Thomson Hall is located in between King Street and Wellington Street, just west of Simcoe. The main entrance to Roy Thomson Hall is going to be off of Simcoe, but there's also an entrance you can get to from King. Here's a nice view of Roy Thomson Hall. We'll be in there tonight, which is very exciting. Wow, there's lots of concerts that happen at Roy Thomson Hall. It is not just TSO all day and all night, but you'll notice that there's a couple of posters here advertising upcoming performances, and I could not help but have this one catch my eye. Jonathan Crowe, concertmaster of the Toronto Symphony Orchestra, and right above him, if we can see with the glare, my main squeeze, James Ennis. Actually, both of these are my main squeezes. Both fantastic violinists, world class, like best in the world. I'm so excited. They're both doing violin concertos this year, and we are so lucky that we're going to be able to come and see them. So if that's something that appeals to you, violin concertos with world class talent, definitely check out those concerts. We've got both of them coming in October. Wow, and that's going to be here in no time, which is super exciting. So we're now here. There's an entrance that you can use to get into Roy Thomson Hall. You can go through the box office. And if it looks a bit busy in there and you don't want to go through the box office and you already have your tickets, you can actually head straight on down past the box office to the main entrance to Roy Thomson Hall. And there are the doors right there that you'll use to get in tonight, and we'll be back later to scan in and take a tour around.
I go all the time. I know. So yeah, you go.
Okay, they're going to inspect your bag when you come on up here.
Thank you. Enjoy. This way to the 3 silver doors.
Great. Yeah. Okay, so if you're just coming in, there's lots to see in the lobby. I'm going to point out that there is a coat check. If you don't want to bring your bags and your purses and your jackets with you, stop by the coat check. I'm actually heading for the bar, and we're going to find out if we can pre-order a drink for intermission. Right, so tonight's program is a really exciting program. The first piece that they're going to play tonight is by a female composer, Lili Boulanger. She's a French composer. She wrote this piece in 1918 when she was only 24 years old. The piece is not a piece that gets played very often, and so it's really exciting that the Toronto Symphony has decided that this is going to be the first piece of the first concert of this season. I learned quite a lot about Lili Boulanger researching in advance of tonight. I learned that she is from a very musical family. Her father, Ernesto Boulanger, who was 77 when she was born, go Ernesto, was a conductor, a composer, a teacher, and he had won a very prestigious composition competition called the Prix de Rome when he was a young man. And then Lili Boulanger, she, as a child, had a lot of challenges with illness, and they plagued her throughout her life. So she wasn't even able to do the sort of musical training that other children who showed her sort of promise would have done. And so her family mostly just enrolled her in private lessons on violin and piano and harp, cello. She had a lot of musical abilities, but she wasn't able to sort of go to the Paris Conservatoire like all the other kids. But she did sign up for a composition program when she was 18, and it was in her first year in that program and the next year that she entered the Prix de Rome, just like her sister Nadia Boulanger, who you may recognize that name as a really influential music educator, had done, as well as her father. And Lili Boulanger became the first woman to win the Prix de Rome, which is an amazing accomplishment. I highly recommend, if you want to hear more Lili Boulanger, please check out the Boulanger Initiative. It's a fantastic organization that really highlights female composers, and I learned a lot through them, so that's what I'd recommend. So the second piece on tonight's performance is Gershwin's Piano Concerto in F, and they have the world-renowned piano soloist Jean-Yves Thibaudet, which is really exciting, and I cannot wait to see this performance with him at the helm. But this is just a really exciting piece of music, and I think because I love jazz, I can't help but love this piece of music. It combines classical and jazz music in a traditional classical form. It's a piano concerto. You've got 3 movements, as you'd expect. But Gershwin, this was a piece that actually came after he wrote Rhapsody in Blue. And funny story about Rhapsody in Blue is that Gershwin didn't even really agree to write this piece of music. He told Paul Whiteman, who was a famous band leader at the time, that he didn't have time to write a classical jazzy piece. And Whiteman was like, "Oh, I understand, completely understand." Still went ahead and put Gershwin's name on the poster for the concert. So Gershwin had barely any time to actually write this piece of music. He found out he was on the poster and he was like, "Oh my gosh, I have to write a piece of classical jazzy music." But when he premiered it in 1924, it was a hit. And at the premiere were some really big classical names like Stravinsky and Rachmaninoff and Leopold Stokowski and Walter Damrosch, who was the conductor of the New York Symphony. And Damrosch was so impressed by this piece that he commissioned George Gershwin to write a piano concerto, and that is what we'll be listening to tonight. The piece, like I said, is in 3 movements: fast, slow, fast. The fast, in the first movement, it starts off with a really exciting introduction by the orchestra, and you can really hear the influence of the city. You can almost hear the hustle and bustle of the city, and it makes total sense because Gershwin actually named this the New York Concerto as a working title when he was working on this piece. And then in that middle movement, the slow movement, you're going to hear an amazing trumpet solo at the start. Super bluesy, a lot of kind of oozy blue notes in there. Just love the blues element in there. And then finally, we're back to fast in the final movement, and we're going to hear some themes come back from the first 2 movements again. And it's just a really exciting number. So I cannot wait for that. My bias might be showing, but I really love George Gershwin, and I'm really excited for this number tonight. So I think we're just about ready to head to our seats and see what kind of seats we got.
larger section.
Sorry, no, it's okay. I'm not monitoring here.
One more right. Thank you very much.
Okay, here we go. Roy Thomson Hall. Okay, so we are in seat row B, seat 14, and as you can see, we are as close as one might be able to get to being in the violin section. Also, I want to note that I see that the double basses are very close by, which I appreciate, and I do like to be close to a double bass. Let me see if I can get a little zoom in action there. There's a double bass. Now behind the double basses are the violin loft lucky winners. I love sitting in the choir loft, but the seats are never available unless you get them rush. So sadly, not in the loft tonight, but I feel silly even complaining at this point because of how amazing our seats are. So scratch that, I'm not complaining, I'm excited. As you can see, they've got the piano in position here, so that we'll be able to push it out for Jean-Yves Thibaudet to come on. And then over there, you'll see the conductor's stand, and also, you see over there, there is where the maestro will conduct from, and an empty chair which belongs to Jonathan Crowe, who is our concertmaster, and he will come in to tune up the orchestra shortly. So we are feeling the excitement in the air. There's a lot of buzz going on. It's going to be a great opening night.
Good evening.
One piano. There goes our very tall concertmaster, Jonathan Crowe. Here comes everyone. Okay, we are off to see if we can find the bar where we pre-ordered our intermission drinks. I will say that unless you are one of the first people out of your seat to run into the bathroom, don't go to the bathroom at the start of the intermission. Go to the bathroom partway through the intermission or towards the end of the intermission when the chimes start to ring. That's the only way to ensure that you do not have a long line of people and you won't eat up your entire intermission just waiting to use the bathroom. Okay, now, here's the exciting part. We find our drinks. Et voila. One coffee and one red wine.
Thank you.
Excellent.
I did not.
Okay, if you do not pre-order your drink for intermission, this is the line. This is the line. So, we're on intermission, and just wanted to share a couple of thoughts on the first part of tonight's performance. So I think that the Lili Boulanger piece was amazing. The orchestra really did it justice. It was I found there was one moment that really I didn't pick up on when I was listening to recordings of this, and that was the violin solo. It was just such a beautiful solo. Of course, we have an amazing concertmaster with the TSO, but that solo and then transfers over to the second violin. It was just really beautiful. I think the piece overall was what I hoped it would be, and the audience responded well. It was a short piece, and somebody right next to us actually said, is that it? Yes, it's a very short piece, but I think it's a good way to get started because everybody's got first concert jitters, right? So I think that made sense. And the second piece, we had George Gershwin's Concerto, and we had Jean-Yves Thibaudet come out wearing very shiny socks and Louboutin shoes that were incredible. And again, I feel like where we were seated, we got a good view of everybody's shoes. So I can tell you pretty much what the footwear is for everybody in the first violins. But anyways, what I really liked about the performance is that Thibaudet really, really enjoyed the first movement. You could tell because he was sort of bopping along and almost like dancing in his seat. It gave a lot of energy. And when you see live music, you actually can see things that you had only heard before. And so that first note that comes in the piano concerto, I had no idea that it was almost at the very bottom of the piano keyboard. So that was kind of neat to see. And then as he finishes that first section all by himself, he's all on it by himself in that first movement, and then in come the violas, and it's so tender. It's like, it was almost like he was able to look at them as they were playing and supporting him in that section, and I really enjoyed that. Overall, just a toe-tapping, fun first movement of the concerto. If I can highlight, I thought the woodblock and the bells were awesome. I don't know why. They never came through in any of the recordings I listened to, and this was I just want to give a shout out, because nobody really ever gives a shout out to the woodblock or the bells. I noticed that I think there was so much excitement in the audience that as soon as the first movement was done, there was applause. And again, the guy seated just next to us was like, why is everyone clapping? You don't clap in between movements. But obviously we loved it that much that most people clapped, so that was kind of exciting. In the second movement, I really want to call out the amazing clarinet section, including the bass clarinet, who just added so much to that trumpet solo. I've heard the trumpet solo. The trumpet solo was amazing. Chef's kiss trumpet solo, but the clarinets especially supporting that trumpet solo was awesome. And then I think for me the highlight of the whole concerto was seeing the violins strumming the instrument. It's not something that you see a lot of, and the fact that I looked up and I saw this first violin section, and they were all strumming as though they were playing the ukulele, which they weren't, but it's a technique you don't see often in classical music, and there was something about it that just felt very playful, and just kind of added to the whole, the lightness and not lightness, that's not quite the right word, but just sort of that there's like a joyfulness in the music that I really, really love this concerto. And I think anyone who loves musical theater will love this concerto, because obviously Gershwin has his roots in musical theater, and you can feel some of these chords that and the chord progression, and it's just like you feel like your heart is swelling up. It's just a wonderful piece of music. I think it's just Gershwin speaks my language, and I love Gershwin. And so, I think the orchestra did a great job with those first two pieces, and we're really excited for Rite of Spring. So we're going to enjoy the rest of intermission now, and then get back to our seats. Oh, this is going to be epic. The orchestra has gotten bigger, I believe. I can't say exactly by how many people, but I feel like they added an extra row of violins for sure. Okay, it's almost showtime. Here we go. See you on the other side. Whoa, that was an amazing performance, and I think we called the conductor back out 3-4 times. The applause went on for at least, I'd say, 4 to 5 minutes. Everybody loved this Rite of Spring, and the orchestra did a fantastic job. So, who could ask for anything more? There's a debate as to which of these gongs is the one that was used in Gershwin versus the one used in Rite of Spring, and is one a tam-tam? We do not know. That bass drum was working hard for sure during Rite of Spring. Can't see the timpani so well through here, but they are nice and shiny. And then I do really love just seeing the folders. Say, Toronto Symphony, first violin. Beautiful. Time to clear out, time to go home. All right, so Rite of Spring, amazing. I mean, from where we were sitting, you could really see Gustavo Jiménez's, the conductor's expressions, and they were just like so intense. I think it would be really exciting to be, in the orchestra, and the orchestra's like the musicians' eyes were glued on him during much of the performance. And this was 100 musicians giving 100%. It was just, I've never heard the orchestra play that loud before, and I thought the loudest they could play was Mahler 5, but this was even louder than Mahler 5. I was, as an audience member, it was just such an incredible experience. We all loved it so much. I think we clapped for 4 or 5 minutes, standing ovation right off the bat. He had to come out 4 or 5 times. He gave props to everybody in the orchestra. I think the loudest cheer went for the bassoon, of course, who had the solo right off the top. Some things that I noticed in the piece, when you listen to a recording, you can hear the musicians working hard, but then when you see the violinist and how aggressively they're bowing, that dun, 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 or plucking the strings, just incredible. And I love seeing the double basses work really hard. It was just kudos to the double basses. I also, have to, again, give some props to the percussion section, the badass bass drum and timpanis. It's just, I don't know what else to say. It was an incredible show. The musicians were into it. You could see them bopping along and counting and just, we were all feeling that energy. Incredible. If we can be serious for a quick second into a PSA, in addition to shutting off your cell phones, putting them into airplane mode, please also check that you don't have any alarms that are going to go off in the middle of the performance like they did tonight. There was a beautiful moment where the orchestra went completely still, bows in the air, and then we hear the sound of somebody's iPhone alarm going off. Please don't be that person. So that is a wrap on opening night of the Toronto Symphony Orchestra. We heard Boulanger, we heard Gershwin, and we heard Stravinsky, and the orchestra, this is their 101st year. It's an amazing organization. We're so lucky to have them in the city, and can't wait for the next show. Almost forgot. What is the common thread that links those 3 pieces we heard tonight together? Well, I think there's 2 things. 1, Russian heritage. So we've got Stravinsky, Russian. We've got Gershwin, Russian parents, Russian, American. And then we've got Lili Boulanger, whose mother claimed to be a Russian princess, though there's no actual, I think, evidence that she was royalty, but she definitely was Russian. So there's that theme that runs through them. And then the other thing that runs through them is actually Nadia Boulanger. Lili Boulanger, obviously her older sister was Nadia. Gershwin goes to Paris in the 1920s and asks Nadia Boulanger to be his teacher, and she turns him down, which, she had her reason. She felt like he wasn't looking to become more of a classical composer, and she didn't want to, tamper with his jazz kind of genre, so she turned him down. And then Stravinsky, apparently, he and Nadia formed a friendship, let's say, in the 1920s when Stravinsky came to Nadia and asked for lessons for his son. And then there was a lifelong friendship that came out of that. So perhaps the common thread is Nadia Boulanger. I think both work, and those were the 2 that I found for tonight as the common thread. Now, there's one more common thread, and I forgot to mention it during the filming for this video, and that is that these 3 pieces were all written in the first 25 years of the 20th century. Stravinsky wrote Rite of Spring in 1913, Lili Boulanger wrote De Matin, Printemps in 1918, and then Gershwin wrote the Concerto in 1925. So really 12 years of each other, you had these three very different pieces composed. It's really incredible. But of the three, I think this one is probably the most interesting, and followed next by the connection they all had to Nadia Boulanger, and finally Russian heritage. But anyways, that's the final wrap on Common Thread for this series. Great question. I forgot to finish the seat review on the night of the performance. I'm going to show you where our seat was located and then talk a little bit about what made it a great seat and what the limitations of the seat are. So, being seated at the orchestra level, we were on the left side of the theater. So I was in seat B14. So any of the footage that you saw filmed inside the hall was from that seat. As you could tell, it put us pretty much as close as one could be to the first violins. And I'm also going to show you another view of the seat, which you can see on the Roy Thomson Hall website. If you use this Google feature here, you can actually zoom in and get a sense of what it looks like in the hall. So B14 is located right over here. So some things that I liked about the seat are that you had a great sound, like almost comparable to being a member of the orchestra. You were that close. Another thing that I really loved about it was you got to see the piano soloist and see what they were doing at the keyboard. And so you can only really see that if you are seated at least on the left side of the hall. You won't be able to see the keyboard if you're seated on the right. So that's another perk of the seat. Some limitations of the seat, though, are that you do not get an opportunity to see most of the orchestra. So if you were seated higher up, like in the mezzanine or the balcony, you can actually see what most members of the orchestra are doing during a performance. Where we were seated, you're really limited to seeing, the violins. You can kind of see back a little bit further to the double basses. You can see the second violins. You can see cello and viola a bit, but you miss most of the woodwinds and the brass and the percussion. A plus of the seat is that you do get to see the conductor pretty well, and you can see what the conductor is conveying to the orchestra through not just his movements, but also with his facial expressions. So another plus of that seat, I would say, is being able to get a better sense of what the conductor is communicating to the orchestra. All in all, though, I don't have a system to rate the seat, but if I did, I think it would score very high. I really do like sitting as close to the orchestra as possible, even at the expense of not being able to see what's going on in the orchestra. And I would probably give it like a 9 out of 10. I'm not sure what could give it the extra point, but we're going to find out if there's a better seat in the house, because we're going to try different seats throughout the season, and I'm going to do a little review of them each time, hopefully with a little while I'm in the hall. But anyways, that was my seat for opening night of the Toronto Symphony Orchestra. Thanks so much for tuning in to this video. It's the first that I've made. If you have any suggestions on other things that I can be doing while making the videos during the night of the performance, please include those in the comments below, and look forward to making the next one.